Hey everybody and welcome. This is Steve Hess, Director of User Experience at OpenBOM, and welcome to this week's OpenBOM webinar. This is webinar number 26 of our weekly webinars, and I am re-recording this because I had a technical problem during a live webinar, so this may look a little bit different than what we actually saw in the live webinar. I'm also refining this webinar slightly to focus just on SolidWorks configuration so that we can tailor this to a specific topic. So welcome and thanks for joining me. Let's go ahead and get started. Some webinar basics. This is just a reminder that I will share the deck with everyone, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this webinar stuff. This is the third in a four-part series on SolidWorks BOMs in OpenBOM, and today's topic is SolidWorks configurations. I'm also going to be very focused on the time. I'd like to keep this to 30 minutes or less. Now, obviously, since I'm re-recording this, I won't be taking any questions live. You can send questions to support@openbom.com. So the topics a little more specific for the webinar today are a quick review of OpenBOM for SolidWorks, how do configurations in parts or assemblies influence OpenBOM, some best practices around managing them, and then we're going to dive into a couple of the headache conditions that exist and try to present some best practices to kind of get you through them and represent a few of them that frankly are just gotchas and you got to watch out for. So we're going to deal with those at the end. So, okay, just some definitions. I'm not going to spend much time on these configurations in this context. Is the SolidWorks configuration for parts or assemblies. And here's a little bit of basics. The OpenBOM for SolidWorks requires the installation of the SolidWorks add-in. There's a video there on how to do that. In the context of this webinar, BOMs will be created for assemblies only. We use a OpenBOM command called save item to save parts into OpenBOM. So look for that. There's another video on that. OpenBOM for SolidWorks does require a license, either a professional user license or above, or a free trial. There's information on our website on how to get that. Or someone can add you to their team or to their company. We prefer SolidWorks 2016 or later, but have success with earlier versions. And then there's a couple of other things that we're not covering here. PDM and Windows File Explorer, Excel, things like that are out of scope for this webinar. So specifically in this webinar, let's look at, we're going to cover 4 lessons. Quick 2-minute review of creating a BOM. We're going to talk about how specifically SolidWorks configurations influence OpenBOM. What happens when I have a configuration? What happens when I set part number? Things like that. We're gonna take a look at a poorly done BOM that's being influenced by SolidWorks configurations. We're going to figure out how to kind of fix that up and get what we want. And then again, we're going to try to look at some of the devilish details of SolidWorks configurations, some that we can and frankly cannot avoid. So that's the plan for today. I'm going to put this live on another screen here and get started with you. So I'm going to jump into SolidWorks and I'm going to open a kitchen vanity. This has a exploded view configuration and a default configuration. So, okay. So I've installed OpenBOM and I've signed in. I've provided my credentials in the settings dialog and set to multi-level and haven't really messed with any of the other settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click the BOM button up here and create a BOM using OpenBOM. Okay, so we've built a vanity bill of material. Let's take a look at that. And I'm just going to review it quickly. I know that there's plenty of other videos on this. You guys have seen all this before. But we bring in part numbers, and we bring in all the information from SolidWorks and property information. We also build this as a multi-level bill of material, so you can see that my door has subparts and my faucet has subparts and sub-assemblies. So that's it. We bring in a structured bill of material, and that's about it. So that's a quick review of what OpenBOM does and how it works within SolidWorks. So let's take a quick peek at lesson number 2. And I'm going to kind of jump back and forth. And so I'm going to apologize for that. But I do want to be able to cover some of the information on the screen with you. And again, you'll get this, I'll make this deck available. But lesson number 2 here is how do SOLIDWORKS configurations influence OpenBOM? There's going to be a lot of information here, but let me read through some of it and then we'll go do an example. So OpenBOM makes bills of material from the active configurations. So what does that mean? It means within your SOLIDWORKS tree, you can only have one configuration of an assembly or a part active at one time. You may have others in those files, but there's only one active. So when we build a BOM from the top level, we come down through the structure, we pick up the configurations that are on or active. So that's really important. It becomes more important if you happen to have multiple configurations instantiated in upper level assemblies, and that's some of the devilish details, and we'll deal with that in a moment. So OpenBOM is based on part number. The way that we extract part number is really important. There's another video on that. I'll put a link at the end on how we get part number into OpenBOM. We're going to review it. We're going to review it right here again. And as it pertains to configurations, we can get the part number from the document name, from the configuration name, from something called the parent in the case of a derived configuration, or we can specify a particular part number. So let's take a look and see what that means. I'm going to open the countertop over here, and within the configuration tab, each configuration has what's called a property setting here. So let's take a look at that. And what this is telling OpenBOM is I can either get my part number displayed in bills of material as either the document name, the configuration name, a user specified name, which is something I would maybe type in here, or if this were a derived configuration, I would have the option of saying get the part number from the parent. So getting the part number from the document name is very common. Quite often we name the document, part number 123. SLDPRD. That's good unless you have multiple configurations. And so what will happen is, as in this case, you want to be careful in that I've got two configurations. I'm telling them both to get their part numbers from the document name. Okay, so why might we run into trouble with that? Well, let's take a look at this. Here's a configuration that I have a little trouble with here we go. We've got a configuration without the coffee cup cutout, and I have one with the coffee cup cutout here. And if I can get this to activate. Having a little mouse issue here. I can see. There we go. Okay. So, and it's probably my intent to not have the same part number for each one of those. So let's go back to our list here. We say, well, these are the places we can get part numbers. Or there's one other place, which is to create a configuration-specific part number called part number. And let's take a look at how we do that. So in the case of when I have two configurations and I want them to each have their own part number, in other words, I might use both of them in my assembly, I want to come up into the SOLIDWORKS configuration-specific area, create a property called part number for each one of my configurations. So I have the default configuration, part number CT1000, that's without the cutout. And then I have another configuration called with cutout, and it has a separate part number. So what we've done here is we've gone through some of the default settings, and we've said that those are good but not quite good enough. What I really want to do is create a configuration specific property called part number and put the part number in there. So let's see how that'll affect our bill of material. So let's go back to our top level assembly, and let's see that we currently have countertop without in the with cutout as our active configuration. So let's change that. Let's change that over to default. Okay, so we now have the countertop in the default configuration, and let's update the bill of material. So what we will find is that the line item for the countertop part number for default, or I believe it was the without, and we'll be able to see that here in just a moment. So what I'm demonstrating here is, okay, so I've got it without the cutout and countertop without cutout. I've got the correct part number here, the CT1000. So as I switch the configuration back and forth, and I do that in the case of this part, as I switch this back and forth using the settings here and update the bill of material, I'm changing the active configuration, and we know that OpenBOM builds BOMs based on the active configuration. That's going to show up in my BOM. Okay, I'm just going to do that one more time here, and we can all see how that works. There we go. Now we have it with the cutout, and you can see down here I've got the image with the little cutout. So that's lesson number 2. You know, how does switching back and forth between configurations show up in my BOM? What's really important, and the salient point here is that within that part, so let's go back one more time, and I really want to try to drive this point home because I see this sometimes in our support calls. Within this part, I have elected not to use these settings down here that say where to get the part number. In other words, I've set them, but when I provide part number as an explicit configuration specific property, that's going to take precedent over those. So go ahead and create a value part number for each one of your configurations. Okay. All right, I know that was a little bit long. Let me pick it up a little bit here. Let's go to, I'm going to jump back over to my webinar here, and let's go ahead and look at lesson number 3. Now, in this case, we're going to fix a problem that we have in our BOM, because which we don't really understand where it's coming from. So we're going to, let's go take a look at the bill of material. And if we were paying close attention here, we would see that there's actually a problem with the door, in that both of these moldings, they're the same part number. They're the molding-26, and they're actually both in the short, I've got configuration name, they're both in the short configuration, but yet they're showing up as 2 line items in my BOM. That feels a little weird to me because I know I've got 2 shorts and 2 longs. For some reason, I'm not getting the long configuration in my bill of material, and I want to know why. So let's go open up the molding that is in the molding-26 part file. So let's find that. We're going to dive down here and go ahead and open that. And let's do a little investigation. Well, we've got 2 configurations, we know that. A long and a short. Let's take a little deeper dive. Let's look at some of the properties here. So I've got, in the short configuration, I'm saying, okay, I'm a little suspicious here. I'm saying get part number from the document name. All right, that might be okay. Now let's go look at this one. I'm saying, okay, also get part number from the document name. Well, I know that I'm going to have trouble with that because these are 2 separate parts, and they're going to both end up with the same part number. So we're sort of in the similar situation that we were just in. So I'm going to go over here to long and create a part number for that. And I'm just going to call this the M1000-L. And for my short configuration, I also need part number. And we'll call this the M1000-S. Okay. So I've assigned both of those, and we're going to work our way back to the top level. I see that I have them instantiated correctly. I've got 2 longs and 2 shorts. They just weren't coming to the BOM correctly. Let's update the BOM. starting to look a little bit better. I've got the -L, the -S. I've got 2 of these. Okay, I see I've got the long and the short. So everything was modeled correctly. Everything was in our product structure, or in our model structure correctly. We just didn't have the part numbers properly defined. And part number is the key to getting the right information into OpenBOM. So once I went into those, gave them each their own unique part number, because clearly they're different parts. Our BOM updated, and everything is working well. I can send this down to my purchasing people and get the right parts. So just to kind of revisit there, we went into SolidWorks and we added a part number property into the configuration specific properties. So okay, let's take a look at the next thing that I want to cover here, which is lesson number 4, and this one's going to be a little. Anyway, this one's going to be interesting in that some things we're going to be able to fix, and some things we just aren't going to be able to fix. But what's going to be important is that we highlight the areas where you might have trouble and try to signpost them and get you in the right direction. So we're going to take a look at the faucet assembly, and it has some additional configurations. It has a positional configuration, an expanded configuration, and some are built as derived and some are built as full configuration. So let's see if we can kind of assess what the best thing to do is and how it might impact our bill of material. So, and I am keeping an eye on the clock here. Okay, I've also got my script over here on my other screen. So, okay, well, let's jump over here and let's take a look at faucet. Okay. So, what's going on here? This is the type of thing where, you might want to show, the handles turned. Okay, that seems kind of, like a possibility. If I'm kind of showing it as installed or maybe in use. I also might have a situation here where I want to show, again, I apologize for I think this has something to do with my recording. Here we go. Okay, and let's see if I can get this last one activated. Okay, there we go. So you can see that I'm starting to get, put together kind of, some exploded views. Okay, I'm not going to spend any more time on that. Okay, so I've got a number of different different views here. So what does this look like when I use this in my bill of material? So let's jump back to our top level BOM, and we see in this case I've got it in the as installed configuration. And what if I want to add another one? Maybe I've got 2 faucets in my bathroom here. Got another one over here, and I want to have that in a different configuration. I've got that one. Those are open. Maybe I want to have that in an expanded configuration or something else. How does that affect my bill of material? Well, I just went ahead and dropped another faucet in here. Let's update our BOM, and let's see what happens. And this is where things might start to get a little bit squirrely, and then we're going to kind of back into the faucet and kind of see if we can't figure out why. Okay, so we can see here that we have one of the faucets that I know that I have 2 of them turned on. So I'm starting to see that I've got a little bit of trouble here. So let's go ahead and take a look like we did with the other one, dive a little bit deeper and see if we can figure out why. Okay, so the first thing we want to try is setting our taking a look to see what we have. Okay, so we have part number, we have it for default, and we have part number for our alternate position, as well. So what is that? So what is that done? Well, there's a couple of ways that this might show up. Let's take a look at our dashboard. If we start seeing two bombs with the same part number, that's because we've got the same part number applied to both of them, and we've got them both instantiated into our upper level. So we have to start making some decisions here. A better approach to this would be to use a derived configuration from this top configuration for my alternate positions, rather than using a full-fledged configuration, or possibly to use a separate part number up here. And right now you see I've got the same part number because they are the same part, they're just in a different position. I could use a different part number in here and keep track of them kind of in their configured position. Maybe the same base part number with a dash number to show them in in a configured place, like perhaps this one shows it as dash open or something. So what I'd like you to start doing is just if you start seeing this kind of weird behavior, you're getting a couple of bombs here, you can only have one bomb with one part number. So if you start to see a couple of them, it's because we're seeing it twice in SolidWorks. So I want you to kind of clean those up, change one of those part numbers, rebuild your bomb, and then validate that you're getting the right thing in. I think I've got a mouse going bad here. That you're getting the right thing in OpenBOM. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to kind of stop there because I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I'm coming up on 30 minutes or so. But I want you to. So now we have the proper thing. We got one bomb. We got with its new part number. So start looking for, if you're seeing those duplicate lines in the bomb, like we did with the door molding, or you're seeing duplicate bombs in the dashboard. Start looking at those configuration part numbers. That's going to be the root of the problem. Now, how you fix that? Maybe you can't create another part number. Maybe you need to do something else. Use a derived configuration rather than a full configuration. Those are the things that you're going to kind of start experimenting with, see what fits best with your workflow. So, okay. So with that, I want to turn back to wrapping this up a little bit. There's some do's and don'ts of working with configurations. I always like to lead off with this example of not creating circular references. And this is always a possibility. I just want to point it out. If you have a subassembly that's calling another subassembly that's calling the first subassembly, you're going to have trouble. That just doesn't make any sense. And the way that's very easy to do in SolidWorks, and let me tell you how. If you have door assembly calling door part, and you have set your configurations to say get part number from file name, you're going to have two part numbers. You're going to have door for the assembly and door for the part. And when door calls door, you're going to get a circular reference. So be really mindful if you're using get part number from file name that you don't have the root of the assembly and the root of the part with the same number. So be careful with that. I don't like to see the same part number for an assembly as for a part because they're just not the same. So kind of give that some thought, especially if you're relying on file name. If you're using explicit part number settings, you're not going to run into this. The second, be mindful of where your default catalog is. We didn't deal with this in the webinar, but there is a setting in your settings, in your OpenBOM settings, called default catalog. It's usually set to SolidWorks items. It could be set to something else that you create. Just be mindful that your parts are going to be saved into that catalog when you create or update BOMs. I like to say to everybody, read the messages that are on the screens. I usually say what's going to happen or what has happened. I use the BOM command and the save item command. The BOM command is for creating bills of materials from assemblies. And when you create a BOM, we automatically create a catalog. The save item command is for updating items in a catalog. There is on the dashboard an explicit catalog command. I don't recommend that you use it unless you know exactly what you're doing. It's being deprecated, and in the next few releases it might not appear there. So if you're using configuration, spend time to understand this. And again, take a look at the difference between full-fledged configurations and derived configurations, and watch out for the duplicates as we just discussed. So so with that, here's some references. I won't cover all these now, but there's this will be in the shared in the deck. I always like to point people to help.openbom.com. There's a great learning center there. All the webinars are listed there. You can go back and view all the earlier ones as well. So please send your questions or comments to support@openbom.com. I hope you have enjoyed this. I respond to all questions, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So have a great evening. Bye-bye.